TNKR Media.
Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, our season premiere. This is a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business, presented by FL Montreal. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL head Mike Newton. Hey, Mike, welcome back.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? It's time to kick off a new season.
Oh, so much to do this season. We're very excited. We are going to talk to a lot more international entrepreneurs this season. We have some big plans, especially for the new year. We're talking about supply chain and urban farming on the program today with the co-founder of Lufa Farms, Lauren Rathmell. Very excited about that. Lots to talk about in business over the last few months. How was your summer, Mike?
Summer was, I guess, a little creative to get around doing things. I like the horse races, and I go to Saratoga, so managed to get down and see a few ponies run. The reality at the end of the day is we are still no further ahead today than we were back in June and July when everybody kicked out from a COVID perspective. And the thing that's taking its biggest toll on us continues to be the change in the workforce and resignation. And it's a challenge. I know, Dan, I think you have an opinion on the decimation that's been going on to many people and many businesses that you know.
Yeah, let's start with the labor shortage. I think that's the one issue, I think, besides obviously COVID and related problems. That's the one issue that's been on the minds of a lot of entrepreneurs that I speak with and some of my clients who are having trouble attracting talent. In communications, it's affecting me as well. I think I could safely say my business would grow a lot faster if I had access to bigger talent pool. What's going on out there in your estimation? Is this sort of like a generational shift? Is COVID sort of keeping a new generation of workers out of commission for a little bit?
Well, I mean, we could go on and have our own show basically on this one topic. The one thing that we're really starting to see is COVID is forced people to rethink their lives. And you take a generation that was already in flux and trying to understand themselves and trying to figure where they wanted to go professionally, and you throw them into a crisis like this, and they're rethinking the rat race, from a certain situation. I mean, the U.S. is now officially called this the Great Resignation, and your turnover rate is astronomical. It's something we've really never seen before. You've got people leaving jobs without having another job because they just don't like where they are, knowing that there's another job out there for them somewhere. I think in a large part this is a continuity of an issue, and a philosophy that started a few years ago with the millennial generation. And I'm 53 and I have a brother who's 39, and the reality is he moved out of the professional world to do exactly what our guest today is talking about, and starting his own greenhouse and growing vegetables and selling. And he happened to have the greatest timing in the world where he pushed this out into COVID. But what we're starting to see is a lot of people rethink how they want to spend their time and their life. And right now, by far the largest increase in turnover is that 30 to 45 age group. It falls into that millennial. And I think it falls right into the philosophical issues that they had previously before COVID. So I think all this done is exacerbate a situation that is going to make most of our worlds very complicated coming forward. I mean, anybody who's in business who is looking at transition, and certainly from a professional firm like ours, the future lies on that next generation. And if you don't want to stay in the profession, or if they only want to work from home, or if we're going to change the way we do things, those of us that still consider ourselves to be in power, have to start figuring out how to make that work. And there's massive flexibility that's going to have to come. Interestingly enough, resignation rates in the 60 to 70-year-old age group is actually down during the pandemic, and there's only been a small modification in resignation rates in that 20 to 25 age. So we're really looking at one group that is really driving, and I am not surprised. I mean, they have been a group that from the beginning has traditionally had a very different set of values than the rest of us, and I think COVID is really making them evaluate those.
So I'm a millennial, I suppose, an elder millennial, but one nonetheless. And I've been really making an effort since we founded TNKR 5-ish years ago to really try to work differently. So we do have opening hours like a regular business, but myself, getting to a 9-to-5 kind of place was never really a possibility. So I dropped that pretense a very long time ago. I like working 7 to 7. I take my days a little slowly. Yes, I do take a lunch. I walk Poppy the dog at lunch as well. I'm a big fan of longer days and spreading things out a little bit and being a little less intense, especially, I mean, I'm in the communications industry, so we can all be very intense and frenzied, especially when we put social media into the mix. So, Mike, people are even talking about a 4-day work week. I don't think we're anywhere close to there yet, but maybe we will be soon.
It's an interesting topic because if you go back probably about 3 years ago, there was a public debate going on between Richard Branson and Elon Musk, which really entailed, Elon Musk said, nobody ever created the wealth and the major changes in the work and the 35-hour work week. And Branson was really pushing for this 3 to 4 day work week, maybe 12 hours a day, but a different approach. It's an interesting perspective because I think what we're going to start to see, and I don't know how we fix the communication, I don't know how we fix the cooperation, but I think we are going to start to see multiple people doing work on a full-time equivalency basis. So you may have 3 people doing two people's jobs, and which requires, obviously a lot of communication, a lot of coordinations, a lot of logistics management, because, clients, people, business, consumers, we're used to 7 days a week, right? I mean, this is something. So people don't want to work those 7 days a week. So maybe somebody's going to work 4 and somebody else is going to work 3. And, the way we've done shift work at the retail level, I think we may start to see some of that finding its way into office work going forward.
Speaking of the way we work, let's talk about the results, and a word that does cause some controversy in business circles, certainly when we get to academic circles or when we talk about business philosophy, and that word is productivity. This piece in the Harvard Business Review by Jamie Teven encouraging everyone to redefine productivity for the hybrid era. There are several objective metrics by which we discuss productivity, right? We know that we are less productive as Canadians than, say, the Chinese or Indians. We know that as just a sort of a cold economic fact. How do we reconcile that, the fact that we are a less productive people?
So I will tell you right now that if you can figure it out and bottle it, you won't have to worry about being on the radio any longer. This is something that is a major, major problem across the board, is the shift in the, I think we had this conversation last year, which is redefining profitability, right? And what is profitable to a business? Is that going to be absolute dollars, or is that going to be quality of life? Is that going to be sustainability? Is that going to be, emotional intelligence? You got to take that thought process and roll it forward into productivity, because productivity is just one of the subsections of profitability. And I think you're going to continue to see people trying to redefine. I think you're going to have industry segments that are going to have different definitions. You are going to have philosophical approaches to all of this. I mean, if you look, some of the things that they talk about is, measuring well-being, collaboration, and innovation. Well, last time I checked, the accountants had a really hard time quantifying any of those, and really from a productivity perspective, it's been about number crunching. It's been about saying, well, efficiency was, you were producing at, 97%. Well, we need you to be at 98%. Well, how do you work in emotional intelligence? How do you work in quality of life? How do you, I think there's a revolution coming in the way we define things. And I think we're going to end up with this polarity between a lot of businesses, which are going to be traditionally minded in profitability and in productivity, to those that are going to be creating very different work environments. And it's funny. I mean, you could say this started 25 years ago in Silicon Valley, when they started to put in ping pong tables and wear shorts to work, and and everything. That it's a continuation of that. And COVID has done nothing. There's nothing new from COVID. All it's done is really sped up the process in everybody's minds.
Sometimes I talk to millennial owners and of entrepreneurs, and they're managing their workforces and talking about how do we set up our office and our bouncy balls and all that. And I'm like, people still like money. I think people just like more money sometimes. You can try that.
It's Dan. It's we're both chuckling, but I got to tell you that this is a problem. And the problem is people have become used to lifestyles. They've become used to ways of living. They've become used to receiving a certain amount of dollars, and it's hard to say I'm going to take less to do less. Even though I want the quality of life. And I think there's a big awakening in ownership of personal situations coming up. And I think that's going to be probably the biggest bridge to gap at this point is going to be that ownership of saying, yes, this is what I want. However, this is what I'm prepared to accept in return. And there's been a whole big discussion on people who are no longer going to want to work on Wall Street but want to make the same money while they're working from home. I mean, there's going to have to be a shift. None of us are going to solve that in the next hour. But the reality is this is coming, and you've got one other really major area, and I think all of these things tie together, which is this multi-generational management within an organization of philosophical differences that today, I'd love to say post-COVID, but where we are today has been completely and totally polarized in terms of quality of life versus if you don't have a business, you don't get to have a quality of life. And this is going to be a battle that I think we're going to see play out in many organizations, probably none more than the professional segment where you've got multi-generations involved. And what is that going to look like as we go forward in order to keep everybody happy?
Real quick, this is one of these sort of entrepreneur bait stories from Fast Company that gets entrepreneurs really thinking. 5 questions emotionally intelligent leaders ask themselves every day. I'll read them quickly, and you tell me your thoughts, Mike. Did I empower my team enough? Am I listening and understanding well enough? Did I recognize people when they went above and beyond? Am I supporting my people in achieving their goals? And am I making my vision for the organization clear and consistent?
I would say with the exception of number 5, if you can try and find somebody that can quantify the first 4, you're way ahead of the game. I mean, these then become philosophical discussions. I mean, the concept of emotional intelligence in and of itself is a bit challenging for a lot of older generation. And I don't mean older generation as being 75 and up. I'm talking the post-millennial group in terms of understanding emotional intelligence. It's one thing to understand it. It is completely and totally another thing to find a way to implement it within your organizations. And I think this, again, is kind of the cultural shift that we're facing. And I won't lie, we're a professional services firm, and I ask myself these questions. If I could actually find a way to answer them on a regular basis, I might have a bigger smile on my face. But as it stands right now, I'm still trying to figure out the math.
All right, let's get started. Season number 13 of Today's Entrepreneur with a really epic guest to start. The co-founder of Lufa Farms, and this is a really Lauren Rathmell is going to be speaking for Lufa. This is really it's more than a business; it's become almost a subculture in Montreal. They're getting international attention. Largest greenhouse, indoor rooftop greenhouse in the world. Just a fascinating business, and one that represents the Montreal Brain Trust and the fact that we have a lot to contribute on the world stage. And we're really thrilled to speak to a company that I'm a fan of. I have no connection with them other than that I've been a patron. They've made the news internationally. They've really put Quebec on the map in terms of urban agriculture. They recently opened, I believe it was one of the world's largest indoor greenhouses, if not the largest. Really impressive company. With us today is Lauren Rathmell of Lufa Farms. Lauren, welcome to Today's Entrepreneur.
Hi, thanks for having me.
First, what is Lufa Farms? Let's just do a quick definition, please.
So we're a company that grows food on rooftops in the city and also partners with local farms and food makers, and everything's provided through an online farmers market directly to customers.
Great. So I'll start off with my initial thought when I was told, we're bringing Lufa Farms on, and I thought I was trying to figure out how I was going to get one of these for the shower, a loofah to clean up with. So I had to educate myself, I guess, a little bit more on what you're doing. But in all seriousness, the solution that you're providing here is to me is a phenomenal one. We look around the world, and the opportunities for us to do urban farming, to feed the world as opposed to processed food and everything else that exists is not only an honorable one, but it's potentially a very financially lucrative one. What were some of the biggest obstacles, I guess, that when you started to build rooftop farms? What were some of the issues?
I think first and foremost was finding that first site. I'm actually sitting on our greenhouse now, working from here. But this site we were looking for an existing building, so we did it in a very, database sense. We went and took Google Maps. We surveyed basically the whole island of Montreal and quadrant by quadrant looked for a rooftop that would have enough space to house a greenhouse, at least 30,000 square feet we were looking for at the time. And then we kind of were looking at structurally, would the building actually be able to support it? And then the third tier would be actually finding a building owner that would be willing to take the plunge with us and test the whole concept out, essentially. So convincing someone to get on board and let their building be the world's first rooftop greenhouse. So that took time. It took, and then engineering the greenhouse beyond that point, again, was like a whole nother, this was the world's first of its type. So figuring out how to actually adapt a greenhouse to be built on a rooftop. Those are some of the key technical challenges early on. And since we've done that proof of concept, it's been easier and easier. Still very hard to find sites and to build greenhouses, but we've learned a ton. And we've kind of slowly perfecting that model and being able to build on more rooftops.
So I got to assume that, there's a lot of people that have little gardens growing on their rooftops. I mean, this is, we're not talking, I can see the picture behind you. Unfortunately, our audience can't, but they can go to the websites. It's phenomenal. And you're talking about 30,000 square feet of urban farming. I grow a few vegetables up on my roof is one thing. I mean, there's got to be zoning, there's got to be permits, there's got to be acceptance from the city. I mean, not everybody's going to go jump on their rooftop and start farming.
No, exactly. I think we kind of had to define it for the city, let's say, and the building owners and everyone in our ecosystem, because it wasn't being done, not at this scale. So this is 3/4 of an acre to kind of give you another idea of that snapshot. Since then, we've built 3 other greenhouses, each bigger than the last. Our most recent we opened just over a year ago in Ville Saint Laurent, and that was the largest today, actually the world's largest rooftop greenhouse. Sorry, I just wanted to give you the square footage. I always forget. But it's essentially 163,000 square feet. So much larger than our 30,000 square feet here today. And sorry, I kind of jumped all over the place, but you get the idea.
Let's talk about that Saint Laurent facility for a little bit, because I mentioned that off the top. That's sort of what got you guys on the map for me, and you made the news internationally. It's really incredible. Did you go into this project wanting to set a record, or did this become apparent later on?
No, I think so. Every greenhouse has been bigger than the last. We're looking for those economies of scale. We want to produce. Each site is so hard to find and build still today that we want them to be bigger so that we can produce more food in one fell swoop, essentially, when we start opening a new greenhouse. So it's really key that we build big enough and then fewer rooftop greenhouses, each larger than the last. What was really great about the Ville Saint Laurent site, which is the timing. I mean, it was not something we planned at all, but we, with everything that happened last year, with the onset of the pandemic in March, we essentially doubled our volumes overnight. It was, everybody's moving to online home delivery, et cetera. And we were able to provide a lot of that. And Ville Saint Laurent came online right a month or two later. So, and it was all the tomatoes you could imagine. We had 10 different varieties, barrels and bushels and pounds and tons of tomatoes. So yeah, fortunately good timing. Lots of tomatoes for Lufa Wars.
Very cool. Let's take a step back again to site selection. I mean, you made it sound like, hey, we'll survey the land, we'll find a rooftop, and boom, so long as somebody's on. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into farming. I grew up in the country. You're talking about site selection, you're talking about soil acidity, you're talking about crop rotation. I mean, they're all things that farmers have to deal with, and we've seen I don't want to say the death of the small farmer, but the reality is that a lot of the field farming has become very corporate, and a lot of small people are not capable of maintaining the farms that they used to have, at least from a financial perspective. You're talking about doing something that, ultimately at the end of the day is not necessarily capital intensive in machinery and equipment, but rather in infrastructure. And I guess, ultimately at the end of the day, the big differences between somebody who's going to do this type of farming and somebody who's going to put a greenhouse on land in the suburbs, are there any major differences? And are you looking for something different when you're looking for a rooftop?
Interesting way to look at it. I think it's more expensive to build a rooftop greenhouse versus one on land. Part of the reason we do that, well, there's actually 2 main reasons we're doing that, which is not to use new land, so to repurpose these lost spaces that are either existing or under, planned rooftops, commercial rooftops. So we're able to repurpose those, turn them into food production, be closer to our customers as well, obviously, by doing that, by being in the city. And then the sustainability side of it, we can actually save about half the energy by being on a rooftop than on the ground on a year-round basis. That's what we've looked at. So it's really, and it's a win for the building below. Obviously, we're year round, we're kind of replacing the negative effects of a urban rooftop, which is, as a heat island in summer, we're a cooling kind of transpiring plant surface. And in winter, we're insulating, we're this nice warm bubble on top to help prevent heat loss and save them their energy as well.
So you've got a lot of people obviously ordering online. Are people capable, with COVID restrictions, or once COVID's over, are people capable of coming, either picking their own or buying from you on site?
At the greenhouse, you mean?
Yes.
We do. So we have, we sell everything online. So everything that we grow, that we source from all of our partner farmers and food makers, is sold in this online farmers market. It's still as fresh as humanly possible. Essentially, kind of our goal with us and a lot of our partners is to avoid waste. So we really do try to pick, plan, bake whatever is being made or harvested to order for a given day. It doesn't mean everything is. We do have to source some stuff, but by doing that, we have as fresh as possible products, as little as possible waste, and we don't need to store anything. We can actually save on the warehouse footprint in that way as well. So yeah.
Cool. The sustainability component of it is great. You still got to get the packages to your clients. So, what have you done from a sustainability perspective, and how are you putting together packaging are you using reusable? Are you using, people bringing back their packaging? How do you get it to them?
Yeah. So everything's delivered in boxes and kind of these gray bins that you might see around. So that would be, and everybody orders what they want for that week. So it's truly like an online farmers market, an online grocery store almost in a way. So you pick and choose what you want. You actually have until midnight before your delivery day to finish customizing your order. And then the next day it's sent out either to a pickup point of your choosing or home delivery, if that's your option, in these bins, these baskets. And based on how much you order, you may get 1, 2, 3, 10, who knows, baskets delivered to you. And then we pick those up on the following week. You can also bring them back to us at any of our pickup points, but that's kind of how the cycle goes. Mm-hmm. And packaging is a big focus actually within the basket as well. We're constantly looking at how to decrease the footprint of that packaging and the sustainability side there. So we've actually converted everything in our greenhouses to compostable packaging, and even some of our plant supplies are now compostable plastic. So it's really a key focus, a key part of our mission test actually, in terms of how we think about the sustainability of everything we do.
And I have to say, the packaging was a major reason why I think in our family, we're two busy entrepreneurs. We ended up increasing our Lufa order because some of these meal kits are pretty wasteful in terms of packaging. And I just started to feel really bad about all these boxes I was getting. So congrats on helping to solve that problem.
Yeah, work in progress, but definitely some good moves.
And Lauren, I was mentioning that, I'm a fan, I subscribe, I love the sustainability. And this company sort of came out of nowhere to become really a huge international phenomenon, the largest indoor greenhouse in the world right now. Tell me how all of this came together. How did you meet your co-founders? What are your dreams, and where is this really interesting business going?
Yeah. So I was studying at McGill at the time when this started to culminate, essentially. I actually studied biochemistry at McGill and met my co-founder, one of my co-founders, Mohammed Hage, during my time there. We were starting to kind of get this idea together around the time that I was graduating. And the idea was really solving for a number of things. It's become so much more since then too, but really looking at freshness issues with produce, food security in terms of what's grown where. And a lot of that early day focus was really just, you go into a grocery store and you see a tomato on a shelf and you might know what country it came from, but you certainly don't know where in that country specifically, let alone who grew it or how it was grown. And we really wanted to kind of solve for that transparency issue, that connectivity issue between people and where their food comes from. So that was kind of, and then that was turned into, okay, let's grow food in the city. How do we do that? Rooftops is key. It solves for a few sustainability things along the way, and then selling directly to customers. Again, that directness, that transparency being kind of at the forefront of what we were thinking about. So right after I graduated from McGill, we were kind of learning the ropes. I did not study plant science. My partner didn't as well. So we were growing things at the McDonald campus of McGill, kind of learning greenhouse growing, learning hydroponics, and being advised by some of the professors there to kind of get the initial stuff figured out. And we have a couple other co-founders as well. Yahya, a longtime family friend, led the charge on the engineering. Now how do we build a greenhouse on a rooftop? He was pivotal there. And Kirtland was on just a longtime mentor, a longtime advisor, and in a number of different capacities really brought the marketing and the communications and the storytelling to the table, and how we could put this all together and really just speak to what became our Lufavores, our customers, ultimately.
It's fascinating. I'm going to jump a little bit around to kind of the COVID concept of bringing this to market and where it's gone. And I guess, I don't want to say that, COVID couldn't have been a better business model opportunity for you, but it certainly helped people think. And as we get into, the discussions, and it's a challenge no matter where you are on this whole discussion of vaccines and what we put into our bodies, it's a very topical conversation right now. And one of the problems with a lot of the standard, farming is, a lot of land has been poisoned over the years, and in terms of what we've done and how we've done the world wrong. The opportunity here to kind of refresh and restart on some of this is massive. Is that, when you play into the sustainability portion, I get it, but is that also part of where you see this is a more natural, cleaner approach to doing things than we're going on in the farming of vegetables before?
Yeah, I think it doesn't replace it. I think it's complementary. I think everyone needs to be increasingly mindful of the circularity of what they do, the sustainability, the footprint of what they do. So the way we grow, again, so we were looking at, local agriculture, urban agriculture, those being kind of two main components that we were solving for, and then sustainable agriculture, responsible agriculture. So the way how do we farm? And we kind of looked really closely at all the different facets of that to make sure that we were very, very sustainability minded, obviously, from the get-go. So recirculating all of our water, kind of being a big one. You're talking about, impacts on the environment. And that was like the key thing that we put in place right from day one. Again, so there's no runoff, there's no waste. It's as efficient as possible. We don't use any synthetic pesticides. We use only biocontrols. So we're also looking at, it's a little bit of a circularity thing there, right? We're creating these ecosystems of good bugs versus bad bugs in our plants to keep things healthy over time. And obviously energy as well, that harmony of the greenhouse on an urban rooftop, those two structures work incredibly well together, and it's very energy efficient design. So I think that's the key. And we work hand in hand with a lot of local farms, a lot of local food makers, and the themes are the same. The values are the same. We look at everyone's kind of studying their footprint, and we have sort of standards that we set out for them as well, or that we work with them on.
Well, you're one up on my next question, because my next question was going to be, how do you control your partners and to make sure that they're maintaining the same standards? Do you have written a protocol? Do you have, does everybody sign on to doing things the same way?
Yeah. Essentially we have, it's essentially like an internal checklist, let's say. We call it our mission test, which is, do they share the same values? Do they do things the way that we need them to be done, or that the planet needs them to be done, right? It's really about sustainability. Packaging is in there as well, like being mindful of the packaging they're using, the ingredients they're using if they're processing food or making or baking. The ingredients are really important. So it really builds this awareness in our whole ecosystem. And we really do seek out people that are already doing that, or that are willing and ready to change or update things accordingly.
I was going to say, you have some really interesting partners. I'm looking forward to my Hof Kelston croissant tomorrow morning. Is that a big part of your success as well, just getting some of those brands within the family? Because it's convenient for me to not have to run around and get my croissants all the time.
Yeah, I think there's just so many cool people doing so many cool things. And our partners are incredible. We have, you mentioned, Hof Kelston's amazing kind of like icon bakery in Montreal. And they're very ingredient packaging, like I said, minded. So they were ready and willing to come on board. And it gives people a lot of access to a lot of different things in one place. Like it's not just vegetables, right? We grow a lot ourselves. We do tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplants, greens, you name it, 50 plus varieties. But then we also source everything you can think of. So we've got dairy, we've got bread, like you mentioned from Hof, and meat, seafood, every category pretty much you need. And we're always looking for partners that, again, share those values, that are like-minded, to help supply those things. I think one of my favorite, or no, I shouldn't have favorites, but one of our I guess, best examples of a partner farm who's been with us a really long time, has grown with us, has experimented with us, tried new varieties for lufivores, is Carl at the farm is called Biosever, Carl Gagnon. It's right in Laval. It's really not far from the city. And he's just every year is doing all sorts of cool things. He's organic, and I think he initially just did a few different varieties of things, and then he's sort of just played with his crop plan year after year. And our team often goes and visits, checks things out. Just cool. Really great guy.
So I got to assume that as successful as the project that you're working on now, you're going to continue to expand either locally or nationally. Have you had requests for the model that you've created, where you've started? I mean, this is relatively new, groundbreaking, excuse the pun, process here. Are you getting requests from other major urban centers as to, hey, how do we get this going, and what does this look like?
Are you talking about like beyond Montreal or
anywhere in the world? I mean, if you're talking about urban farming, you have places like New York City or Paris or a lot of these places that have it. I mean, you even look at some of the cities in Africa and Asia. If you could start creating these things, I think we solve a very large problem of hunger around the world. I mean, this is a recipe again that is probably something we should be looking at in the future. You guys are one of the first to do so. Is this going to provide an opportunity for you to try and get your message out and work forward? Forget the dollar value to it. I'm just talking about principally here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we set out to do this. That's why we built the world's first commercial rooftop greenhouse, and we've steadily grown in Montreal. We joke, like we tell our team, this is a multi-generational endeavor. This is a long game. This is not a like grow fast and split sort of situation. We're really steadily trying to create a business model that is not the only solution, but can complement a lot of these sustainability, food security, and other issues, especially in urban areas where populations are increasingly densifying. So we've proven the concept in Montreal. We've, especially over the last year with kind of COVID crunch times, we've really honed a lot of the key components of our operations. And now I think we're at the precipice of expanding beyond Montreal. That's really the next big step that we plan to take. We're going to continue to grow in Montreal and build more rooftop greenhouses, but we're really looking, a lot of our team's effort now is starting to look up and look ahead. Which city's next, and how do we start really rolling this out?
Are you still doing any work with McDonald College in the West Island? I mean, they've been trying to be at the forefront of a lot of this work as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have advisors there that we ping from time to time to kind of help us with some of the key problems we're up against. Yeah, Danielle Donnelly was one of the key people that helped us. She basically taught Mohammed and myself plant science. She helped us with a lot of like literature reviews and kind of early studies of urban agriculture. It's really, really their amazing team.
It's going to be interesting to see how the sustainability, environmental component of doing the right thing is going to mix with capitalism somewhere in the near future, before we start to see large corporations starting to put greenhouses on top of their big buildings. So, power to you. This is a phenomenal project, and like I said, growing up in the country and watching some of the effects on farmers, this is a great thing to see.
We'll have Lauren's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur in a moment. Certainly, they've had some interesting offers, I'm sure, in the past few months, especially since they made the news for that largest indoor rooftop greenhouse in the world. Let's bring in Jean-François Audet, partner and vice president at Groupe Fuller Landau, to talk about acquisitions, unsolicited and otherwise. Jean-François, welcome.
Thank you, Dan, for having me today.
And Mike, in the case of Lufa, I mean, I know in PR, once you start breaking through and making the news on CNN and getting some headlines internationally, people are going to come calling.
Yeah, look, I mean, everybody is looking for something that is a hot topic that has a really good situation within the marketplace that could be the next unicorn, as they call them in Silicon Valley. And the reality is somebody at some point is going to come knocking. And certainly when you get into groundbreaking areas, you get into technology areas, you get into sustainability areas, there are a lot of people with a lot of money who are going to start knocking on your door. And JF, I mean, part of that excitement, I guess, is how do you manage unsolicited offers? And when they come your way, what are some of the things that you should be considering when somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, we're interested in your business. Are you for sale?
There are so many things to consider, Mike. And maybe before we address that specifically, maybe I'll just speak about the landscape and everything. So So first, like the unsolicited offer, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's an offer, an unsolicited offer in respect of which a management or board of directors, did not set out or otherwise arrange for the offer to make such an offer. So, and I think it's especially relevant nowadays to discuss about that topic because if you just look at the Canadian M&A market activity, it completely recovered to its pre-pandemic level. This is true both on a transaction count and with regards to the value of the deals that are being out there. And looking at the current pace for the 6 months, 2021 is pretty much in line to be as good as 2018. And just to throw out numbers out there, 2018 we had close to 2,000 transactions that accounted for approximately 125 billion. Right now, first half of 2021, we're just over 1,000 transaction with a valuation of give or take 62 billion. So pretty much on track to match 2018, which was a very solid year in terms of M&A. And there's a lot of enthusiasm in the marketplace, as you said. You've got many companies and strategic buyers that are loaded with cash, and not to mention those private equity firms. They've been really good at raising capitals over the last few years, and now they're sitting on a lot of dry powder, and they need to find companies to invest in to get a return on that capital that was raised over the years. So taking a step back, we are in an environment that is very suitable for these unsolicited offers, and offers will be looking for companies with, a solid business model and with, an interesting and a bright outlook. So, it's not a question of if it's going to happen. It's more a question of, when it's going to happen.
So one of the things, JF, that I find interesting in the numbers is we have come full circle, like you said, from 2018. The interesting component, I think, is the mix of the type of deals that are going on, and I think we're going to continue to see businesses like Lauren's be at the forefront as a lot of people go back to we were very global on a lot of things. I think people with COVID have started to look inward again, and there's a lot of opportunity that's out there, and there's a lot of money in making our lives a better place as we come out of this. Lauren, if she hasn't already, I'm sure you're going to get a couple of knocks on the door. What are some of the first things that they should be doing?
Well, the first thing is really the first question they should ask themselves is, are they even contemplating selling the business? I mean, if you're looking at, from the seller's perspective, when you get an unsolicited offer, the investment is pretty low. And preparing to put the business for sale, it demands significant time and resources. So you can bypass that by getting an unsolicited offer. But on the other end, though, getting unsolicited offer, the buyer really drives the discussion and the timing. And by initiating this process, the buyer will be framing the narrative around what makes the target company valuable and how much it is worth. And more importantly, it will control timing, and it will push the seller into a major decision that is likely not going to be made at the best point in the business cycle, or at a moment where the owners are ready to retire. So and that's the thing with unsolicited offer. You'll never really know if you're getting the best deal because you're pretty much dealing one-on-one with a prospective buyer.
Yeah, and I think the big thing when you start getting into sustainability in areas where people have started this with a mission and a purpose, and the corporate world comes knocking on capitalism, I think one of the things that they may lose control over is the quality of the product and the direction that they want to take things. What are you looking at when you're consulting on somebody who gets an offer, who's in a situation like where Lauren is, that obviously has started this business for a purpose? It's not just about making money. It's about making the world a better place. And, some capitalist knocks on the door and says, I've got $1 billion, but this is what we're going to do.
There's always a question of fit with, the potential purchaser. You want to know who you're dealing with. Are you dealing with a competitor? Are you dealing with a private equity firm? These guys, they have an agenda, and you want to see, if there's a fit with, what you want to leave as a legacy. So that's, truly the number one thing that you're going to be looking at. And now, assuming that you're moving along into the process, well, it becomes a question of, rallying your team to be surrounded by professionals. And that would mean your accountant, your tax experts, your legal advisor. There are so many things to consider and to look at when you're getting an offer. And just from a legal standpoint of view, I mean, you want to have your lawyer around the table to review that, purchase agreement. And I'm not going to learn you anything, Mike. I mean, when you get a purchase agreement, it's a lengthy document, and most of the provisions in there are standard, but there may be, some specific provisions that you want to have a specific look at. And I'm thinking about, the non-compete provision, responsibilities, warranties that, following the closing, you as a seller, you want to make sure that you limit your exposure as much as possible following the closing.
Jean-François Audet, partner and vice president at Groupe Fuller Landau on acquisitions. Thanks so much, Jean-François.
Thank you very much, Dan.
And Mike, at the end of the show, as we always do, we turn to our guest, Lauren Rathmell, co-founder and greenhouse director of Lufa Farms, and we ask her for her one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. Lauren, what do you think?
I thought a lot about this, and I think there's so much advice and so many things we've learned along the way. I think one of the things that really stands out, especially in this era of awareness and everything being kind of social endeavors, sustainability endeavors. The really important thing to me, and I guess in a snapshot, would be center yourself and your endeavor on strong, transparent values. We did that from the get-go, and I think we've maintained that all along the way. This is really what anchors your team. It defines your culture, and it builds your following. That's why our Lufavores are with us, and hopefully will stay with us long term.
I'm not going anywhere, so thank you for your mission and for your extremely competent business. I mean, it's great. It's really great to receive those boxes, Mike. Just really another great Montreal company to start the season, and one that is not done making noise internationally.
Definitely. And, it's the one thing that over the last little while that's really amazed me about, the shows that we put together has really been this kind of groundbreaking environment of taking young, new technology or young, new sustainability models. And, kind of, I don't want to say getting away from the old manufacturing, but there's certainly a lot of really good things that are going on in this city. And it's great to see the entrepreneurial spirit alive and kicking in a younger generation. So, for the old man like me, it's good to look down the road and see a lot of positivity coming our way.
I had one of those supply chain moments where, a few months ago, we had Lufa Farms, and they were saying about all their extra strawberries, and then I tasted the strawberries in their juice. And today, Lauren was talking about all the tomatoes, and I harkened back to last week when we made all the tomato sauce from our extra tomatoes that we got from Lufa Farms. So supply chains are changing, and we'll be bringing that up, of course, a little more on the show this season. Mike, it's been a great show. Thank you, and we'll see you back here next week.
Dan, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Don't forget today'sentrepreneur.org for 13 years worth of shows if you want to get some entrepreneurial inspiration there. And we'll see you back here next week. Don't forget to subscribe on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or your favorite podcast platform. Take care.
This has been a production of TNKR Media. Good talk.